Roger, always good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Sean, what a great time to be alive. What a great time to be an American, to see the president turning around the country the way you would turn around an ocean liner. It's amazing how quickly he's moving to make America great again.
All right, we've got a lot to cover tonight. By the way, before I forget, because I'm at that age, I have a fashion question and a movie question for you, and maybe even a Pope question if our time permits at the end. But I want to start with this. It's been about 50 days since Donald Trump started his second term. You, beyond knowing him really well, are sort of a very astute historical political person. Like you've seen all this. What are your big takeaways between what is different from Trump 1 and Trump 2?
Very dramatic differences. Look, in 2017, Donald Trump came from the world of business to the world of politics. Not unreasonable to think that all the Republicans are really for him and all the Democrats are really against him. I don't think he ever fully understood that Republican Democrat is really not the division in Washington. It's the outsiders and the insiders. Like Ronald Reagan, he was an outsider president. He wasn't part of the club. So he had a number of Republicans who were very nice to his face, had to support him publicly because he was so popular, but who really weren't copacetic with his agenda. And then secondarily, I think he hired a bunch of people based on their party credentials, but not based on their commitment to his agenda. That's completely different. So now I think he's got an all-star team, highly capable people who understand that their job is to implement his agenda, not to dilute, derail, or delay his agenda. Everybody pulling in the same direction, one of the keys to success in business and politics. I think that's a major, major difference. This is an all-star team. Everybody's on the same sheet of music. And as you can see, Sean, there's been an enormous amount of planning going into the first 100 days. He's hit the ground running. Whereas last time, candidly, I think, first of all, he was pleased, but maybe a little surprised that he won. Because, I mean, after all, the New York Times said that Hillary Clinton had a 93% chance of victory. Guess they were wrong. Uh, this is a whole new day. He's supremely well prepared for this moment. And as you can see, he's having the time of his life.
You know, it's interesting right now. There's this disruption in the market because of his policies. The interesting thing to me is that he's been telegraphing this for a couple months. There's going to be a little disruption, I think is the catchphrase that he uses. I think that he fundamentally understands, in my opinion, I want to get your take on this, that if I'm going to reshape things, kind of restack the world order, this idea of really fair trade, reciprocal tariffs, cut the government for the first real time in decades, that, yeah, there'll be a little disruption and the markets may go up and down. But I feel like he's more focused on the big prize and the long-term objectives than the short-term up and downs, if you will. And it's a different Donald Trump, because maybe in the past he'd be more receptive to a bad day's news story or market fluctuation. This time, I think it's more a sense of, I want to walk out of office with a legacy, not just of a couple bills passed, but somebody who has fundamentally transformed the markets and society and set up America to succeed for the long term.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I mean, first of all, he has the luxury of not having to run for reelection,
Right.
which means that he has to do some hard things that are going to be difficult. We saw the same thing, by the way, after Reagan's election. The initial reaction to the Reagan tax cuts, even though revenues went up every year he was president because of them, but the initial reaction was not good. We had a very rough midterm election, but by the end of the 4 years, you had a roaring economy as the tax cuts began to kick in. I think so it is with Donald Trump. He's not worried about tomorrow. He's worried about the future. And therefore, yeah, we're going to go through some dislocation. I think the economy will have rebounded by the time of the midterms. because of his commitment to energy independence, between the massive, not millions, not billions, but trillions of waste and fraud and corruption that he's going to be able to uncover and zero out with the help of Elon Musk. That combined with getting spending under control, I think you'll have a rebound. Everybody's like Chicken Little. They're worried about the market tomorrow. I'm worried about the market a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now.
I agree. That's the thing. People have got to stop worrying about the short-term process and the long-term results. You mentioned the people, and I agree with you. I think that he's got a team. It's truly a team, not a bunch of people, which is, I think, what we had in 2017. We had a bunch of people. I was introducing myself to some of them on day 1 and day 2 and day 3. This time it seems much more cohesive, much more focused. Is there somebody, in your opinion, that's sort of like the all-star or the all-stars right now, 2 or 3 people who you're like, man, those people are just killing it?
It's tough to choose because there's so many stars. None of them eclipsing Donald Trump, of course, but Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, this guy's an outside-the-box thinker. He's a big believer in gold. He is thinking long and hard about how to do away with the income tax. Yes, that could actually be done. He is a guy the president can trust to go do a delicate negotiation and come back with the goods. I think he's a libertarian. I think he's among the president's very best appointees. But Tulsi Gabbard, former Democrat, now a Republican, she's a future superstar. I've said this before. She's going to be your first woman president. Maybe not.
Really? That means a lot coming from Roger Stone.
She just has it. She has that elusive quality of both principle and communication skills. She's the best I've seen since Reagan. And I'm not saying she'll be president in 2028. What I'm saying is she will be president someday. She's only 43 years old. But her talent level, her knowledge, her adherence to principle, because she's tough as nails. Lieutenant Colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve, combat veteran, Kuwait and Iraq, championship surfer, a crack shot. I mean, she has an enormous future in our party. But I think she's another one of the real standouts in the cabinet.
Do you think that she could get through a Republican primary right now without changing her stance on life?
I think her stance on life is a little more nuanced than perhaps some people realize, but depends on who else is in the race. I mean, look, politics, you know this. In politics, a week is a lifetime. So anybody who's measuring the drapes for 2028 is a little premature. A lot can happen between now and then. And by the way, maybe she's vice president before she's president.
Good point. Good point.
It's too early to say. By the way, George Bush, remember him? He was pro-abortion his entire career until he wasn't.
What do you think about the job that Elon's doing?
I think Elon's doing an amazing job. I mean, the people who are screaming the most about Elon uncovering waste, fraud, and corruption are the people with something to hide. It's kind of logical. I mean, we just learned out that they gave John Podesta, Hillary's old campaign manager, a $372 billion slush fund to give to nonprofits, all of whom had a political motive. And you're worrying about where our tax dollars go? So I think that Elon is doing an amazing job. And those who are screaming are the ones who have something to hide.
All right, I hate to interrupt this conversation, but you've heard Roger bring up Ronald Reagan, right? And Reagan was the guy who said it best. Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. Those words have never felt more relevant today with everything that's going on around the world. We need to prepare the next generation, and that's exactly what the Great American Leadership Program does. This is not a summer camp. It's an elite, hands-on leadership summit designed to equip high school students with the tools to lead and think critically. This is what we need, guys, the next generation to be ready to embrace the principles and values that made America great. It's not just another summer program. Picture this. I mean, if you've ever been to the Reagan Library, you know what I'm talking about. You're at Pepperdine University in Malibu, overlooking the Pacific Ocean, and you see so much happening, but you get immersed in this leadership program. Students take on real live simulation, from acting as the president in the Oval Office to being in the command center and being a military advisor. And even some of folks will play the media. Let's talk about how that goes. Don't miss this big once in a lifetime event this July. Bottom line, if you want to keep President Reagan's vision alive, we need to invest in the next generation. Spots are limited in this program. They're filling fast. Use code SPICER25 to save 25% right now. This exclusive offer, though, expires March 25th. Visit ReaganFoundation.org/summer. ReaganFoundation.org/summer. And, look, guys, freedom isn't guaranteed. We got to invest in the next generation of Americans. All right, back to Roger Stone. So you've known Trump a long time, and I'm fascinated by the media's attempt to try to break the two apart, right? That's always, how long is Elon going to last? When will Trump sour on him? I tend to think that Trump likes what Elon is doing, appreciates the fact that he's like a heat shield to the guy. But you know him. What do you think that Trump, I just think the media wants to create controversy more than anything else.
Yeah, I think this particular tactic is not going to work. First of all, if you watched Elon's interview with Sean Hannity, Elon was very deferential to the president, which is the way you're supposed to treat the president.
Yes.
Secondarily, he's getting the job done, and that's more important to Donald Trump than anything else. When they put Elon on the cover of Time magazine, sitting, at the Resolute desk, nice try, but I don't think that's going to work. Elon played a key role in Trump's election. He's playing a key role in setting the tone for this administration. If we're serious about doing away with the income tax, if we're serious about operating on a tariff-based revenue, well, then we're going to have to bring federal expenditures down. We're going to have to get our spending under control to make that affordable. And Elon makes that actually possible. This idea that, that there is no waste and fraud in the government is an absurdity. Back under Reagan, we had something very similar. It's called the Grace Commission. Mm-hmm. They did a great job. They identified literally billions of dollars that could have been saved, and then nothing happened because no one had the bully pulpit to push it. Elon Musk brings you a couple things. First of all, extraordinary technical ability to get into these records and find and identify the waste, fraud, and abuse. But secondarily, he owns the largest platform, social media platform, communications platform in the country. So he can let the people know what's going on. The people, I think, are very upset. The left trying to claim that Trump's numbers are collapsing. No, Trump's numbers are holding up extraordinarily well because people aren't for waste and fraud. They're sick of it. They're sick of paying their hard-earned tax dollars and seeing it squandered on non-profits that are, studying the mating habits of the tsetse fly, if you know what I mean.
It is funny because I think part of this is that they don't like the idea that somebody's coming up and disrupting the status quo. The sort of everybody's had their, hand in the cookie jar for so long that he's kind of calling it out, which brings me to another point. I think that we talked about the people, but I had a conversation with the president probably a week ago, and we were talking about the media, and I just think that he's handling the media in a much more confident way, and maybe that's not the right word, but he knows that he's in charge. I think he's less concerned about them than anything else. And I sort of really love the approach that they're taking to the media now, which is, we know who covers us well. We can give attention to other folks. We can shut out some folks. I'm very, very laudatory about the entire way in which this White House has approached the media, as opposed to, how we did it in 2017.
I completely agree, particularly when you compare it to Joe Biden.
That wasn't a very high bar.
Well, but just when you look at the accessibility of the president,
yeah.
I mean, he's completely accessible. I think he's committed to transparency, unless, of course, you're from a fake news outlet in which he'll simply say, "Next question, please."
Right.
And I don't blame him for that. But I think he's Ever since Butler, Pennsylvania, there's a very slight change in him that I detect. There's a certain serenity. There's a greater confidence. Not that he wasn't always confident, but I hate to use the cliche, but he's on a mission from God, and he knows it. He knows it. He is absolutely certain in his steps. Uh, when after Reagan cut taxes, people told him it was a mistake. This is going to cost you a reelection, and so on. He stuck to his guns. Trump is exactly the same in this case. He knows what he's doing is right. Yeah, there's going to be some dislocation. There's going to be some unhappy people. But I think he's absolutely confident in what he's doing. And I don't know why the left is so upset because, Sean, he talked about it at every campaign stop throughout the campaign. He told people exactly what he was going to do. I guess they're just used to political figures not really doing what they say they're going to do. That's not Trump. Trump is not a politician. He'll never be a politician. He's the leader of a political movement. There's a big difference.
Exactly. No, that's true. It's funny, though. I mentioned the media. You put this in your newsletter the other day and then tweeted it with like the FBI director having a direct line to the president. And I kept thinking, you called it out. You're like, J. Edgar Hoover met with JFK, LBJ Nixon, James Comey. Unfortunately, I was there. Like, Comey and him had dinner. Like, the idea that this is not a normal thing, it's almost like the press is trying to gaslight us and say, don't believe all the imagery that you can see on the internet. This is somehow abnormal that the FBI director speaks directly with the president.
Yeah, I mean, from a line of authority person on paper, it is true that the FBI director reports to the attorney general, who reports to the president. That doesn't mean that the FBI director can't meet with the president anytime the president wants him to or that he wants to. And as for having a direct hotline from the FBI director's desk in his home directly to the president, J. Edgar Hoover had one. Why would you want to go through the FBI switchboard? Those are the people who spied on Donald Trump's 2016 presidential campaign. Those are the people who raided my home at 6:00 in the morning to arrest me for the non-existent crime of lying about Russian collusion, the Russian collusion that never really happened. So they have proven themselves to be trustworthy. Watching Christopher Wray prior to the appointment of Kash Patel saying, if that guy's appointed, the FBI is going to be politicized. Please give me a break. If that guy's appointed, the FBI is going to be reformed to go back to what it's supposed to be, a nonpartisan, completely unbiased law enforcement agency seeking the facts, not trying to accuse parents who go to school board meetings to object to the curriculum being taught to their children as domestic terrorists.
You know, we keep talking about the status quo and how there's this attempt to defend it, whether it's the media or whatever else. And there was something in your latest newsletter that caught my eye. And you wrote that there should be a warning to Trump's DOGE, the Elon Musk-led committee, about trying to go up against the military-industrial complex, which, I mean, you talk about just a black hole of federal spending. Explain, are you saying that they should be careful or that there's going to be huge pushback? Like, what's the warning that you want everybody to be aware of?
I continue to be concerned about the president's personal safety.
Really?
When I examine what happened in Butler, Pennsylvania, we still have more questions than we have answers. How could the Secret Service, the state police, and local police all be on different radio frequencies? How could the local police have recognized that there was a man inside the perimeter with a gun who'd been seen with a rangefinder, but nobody tells the president's direct detail for 92 minutes? That doesn't make sense. Why do we wash down the deck of the top of the building from which they tell us that this man, Thomas Marshall Crooks, shot? Unless, of course, we don't want his DNA. Kind of reminds me of the way they hosed out the back of the limousine after John Kennedy was killed within a half an hour. So there's just too many questions there. And as far as the West Palm Beach incident, this guy's ties to Ukraine are unquestionable. So there's just too many questions. Trump is such a complete existential threat to the established order that I hope a Secret Service detail is on their toes. And frankly, I pray for him every night. I say the rosary every night, and that's the first item for me, the
Oh,
protection of our president. You'd call me a conspiracy theorist, but Sean, they tried to kill him twice. We know
right.
that, at least twice. And then
Well, and then
yesterday,
the Cash Patel stuff, right? He doesn't want them guarding him. He wants a direct line. There's a concern about a lot of these people. I mean, I got to think that for the right reasons that they don't feel safe.
now I broke a story on my 77 WABC radio show last night that there was a man with a gun who got into the room when the president gave his State of the Union address the other night. You won't find that any place in the media, but I had sources in the Capitol Hill police officer. The man was apprehended and he was removed. So that disturbs me. I pray for the president's safety every night. The kind of change that he's making, the kind of threat he is to the established order. I think they tried to kill him twice, and I think they may try again. I pray that they fail, but I'm just being realistic. I don't think it's a conspiracy whatsoever.
So when you say that in your newsletter that Washington will not recover from DOGE, is that them trying to go against him or him trying to go against them?
No, it's him trying to go against them. In other words, they continue to pretend that we don't have this level of waste and fraud and abuse. And now Elon's laying it out there for all to see. And every day we come up with a new statistic, a new number. None of this makes sense. I mean, I saw Bernie Sanders. Bernie used to criticize billionaires and millionaires. Now he only criticizes billionaires. That's because he and his wife skimmed millions off of his two presidential campaigns in media commissions. Not illegal, but not very socialistic. He seems like kind of a free enterprise guy to me. So Bernie no longer criticizes millionaires because driving the top of the line Mercedes with 3 vacation houses, Bernie is no longer part of the proletariat. In other words, socialism for thee, but not for Comrade Bernie. But you see him out saying, nobody who's 160 years old is getting a Social Security payment. That's the point, Bernie. No one is, but somebody's taking that money by using a fraudulent.
Right. Well, DOGE uncovered $36,000, a COVID loan to an individual that was 157 years old. It was funny. Someone put out, who cashed the check. We should trace it. I jokingly said, oh, people at 157, they don't use electronic payment. They just go to the bank. Because if you're 157, that's what you're used to. But it's laughable, but it's true. How could someone be 157 years old and still getting a loan?
Bernie Sanders is the worst kind of demagogue. I used to at least respect him because I figured, okay, this guy is a true believing communist. He really believes the crap that he espouses. At least he's sincere. But once he endorsed Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden, it became clear that he doesn't really believe in anything other than getting reelected. So how does Bernie, who's never been anything other than the mayor of Burlington or a U.S. senator, how did he become a millionaire? No, Senator, didn't come from book sales. Nice try.
Outside of being a well-known political operative, you are a man of fashion. You critique people, you give awards out, and I want you to weigh in on this latest controversy. So, the Zelensky has this meeting in the Oval Office. I don't think he showed the president the level of respect that you should show any president in the Oval Office. There's a meeting today in Saudi Arabia. Everybody there from the Ukrainian side is dressed in suits. I don't know why we couldn't do that. Fair enough. You can weigh in on that. But then folks on the left, and this is where I want your take because I have my own angle, but I want to hear Roger Stone's. Everyone goes, well, if you have a problem with people not dressing appropriately in the Oval Office, how can you not say anything about Elon? What says Roger Stone?
Elon wore a suit and tie to the State of the Union because that was the appropriate thing to wear. Elon's got his own style. But Zelensky addressed a joint session of Congress wearing a dirty fatigue T-shirt. He shows up, hat in hand, to the president of the United States wearing a dirty sweatshirt. I think it's disrespectful to the president. I think it's disrespectful to the taxpayers who've given this guy $350 billion. $350 billion. This guy cannot afford a suit. Sean, when he went to the World Economic Forum, and spoke there, he wore a suit and tie. He can't wear a suit and tie for the president of the United States. And Elon, by the way, he looked pretty damn good in a suit at the reunion.
Well, if you're a billionaire, I bet you can get it tailored nicely at Joseph A. Bank or something. But I actually agree with you. My view is, hey, if you're the world's richest man, I'd love him to dress up a little, to be honest with you. I think there is a level of respect that does go. But when you're giving, which is what Elon's doing, right? He's coming into government to give us his expertise. Zelensky's taking. And if you're coming to somebody to ask for something, you show them a sign of respect. Like I said, I'd love both of them to do it, but I think Zelensky was in a different spot because when you're coming to someone and asking them for something, you dress appropriately for the occasion.
I agree with your analysis, although maybe now Elon can see on video how great he looks in a suit. Maybe he'll start wearing one. Who knows?
All right. I want to ask you one question then about another topic as well. You made a comment. I was on a plane the other day, and I say that because I would not have paid to watch the Apprentice movie, but I wanted to see what all the hubbub was about. And honestly, I found it disappointing. But then you critiqued it and said that you thought the actors did well. Do you think that is your commentary just about their acting or the movie overall?
The movie overall is based on a false premise.
Right. Okay.
The lawyer, Roy Cohn, did not make Donald Trump. Donald Trump made himself. The lawyer, Roy Cohn, was influential in helping Donald Trump understand how the fast track of Manhattan real estate worked, how the media cycle, particularly those of the tabloids, work. But Donald Trump made Donald Trump. Roy Cohn was influential. The actor who played Roy Cohn, Jeremy Strong, having known Cohn, having met Trump through Cohn, was right on the money. In other words, he captured his persona in every way, his speech patterns, his idiomatic tics, his eccentricities. It was really masterful. The actor who played Trump, not so much, a little bit, but not so much. But there's a political agenda there that's not true. No, Roy Cohn did not blackmail the head of the New York State Tax Abatement Board with the guy's sexual history to get the Commodore Hotel project approved. That's just a lie. That's just a made up lie to try to make Cohn and Trump more sinister. The movie itself is a fine piece of filmmaking in the sense that they capture the look and feel of New York in the late 1970s. But the factual basis here is lacking. I did think that Jeremy Strong actually deserved an Academy Award for his depiction of the lawyer Roy Cohn. But that's about acting. That's not about
right. Okay. And I agree with you. Yeah, he's a very. I found his acting very good. I agree with your analysis of the movie. Roger, the last thing I want to ask you about, because I am intrigued as a guy who admittedly has not followed this closely, but the other day on your show, you had the Tate brothers and their attorney. Explain to me like what your take is, because I like I said, admittedly, I see enough to know it's an issue, but not enough that I can speak eloquently on it. So these guys were overseas, accused of some crimes, were able to come back to Florida. It seems like, at least in my understanding of looking online, that people are divided. What is your take on the Tate brothers?
You're right. I got a lot of blowback about this. First of all, let's recognize the Tate brothers are U.S. citizens. Secondarily, in this country, you're innocent unless you're proven guilty, and there are no outstanding charges against them in the United States. The Attorney General of Florida, who was appointed by Ron DeSantis, a man who should be investigated for illegally raising money from the executive office of the governor for DeSantis' presidential campaign, shouldn't be throwing stones, but he's now investigating the Tate brothers. That's good. They've been in the country, the state, 5 whole days, their entire life, 5 days. So are you saying they committed some crime within those 5 days? Now, I believe that the charges against them in Romania are manufactured. I think that they are targeted because they preach self-responsibility, sobriety, spirituality, physical fitness, Uh, yes, it's a hyper form of masculinity. But Sean, if you canvassed every woman I'd ever dated in my entire life, I'm sure you could find some woman who would say something terrible about me. Until some crime is proven against them, they're innocent until proven guilty. Now, do I agree with everything they say and do? No, not at all. It is controversial. I think they're getting used as a pawn here because there's a proxy fight. Governor DeSantis would like to have his wife succeed him as governor. He's term limited, but President Trump has strongly endorsed Byron Donalds, the dynamic congressman from Naples, who's been a real MAGA champion. And the irony is, Governor DeSantis criticizes Congressman Donalds for missing votes because he was out campaigning for President Trump in 2024 when nobody missed more votes in Congress than Ron DeSantis did when he was running for governor. So please give me a break. This has become kind of a proxy fight between
Yeah.
the two. Donald Trump is more popular in the Sunshine State than Governor DeSantis is. I'm not saying the governor's not doing a good job. I'm not saying that he isn't popular, but he's not as popular as the president here. I think in the end, if his wife chooses to run, she'll lead in the polls in the beginning. It's all name ID. Her husband's governor. And Byron Donalds is well known in his section of Florida. But let me remind you, Ron was at 8% in the polls and when Donald Trump endorsed him in 2018. He went from 8 to 63 virtually overnight. That is the Trump magic. And I think the Tate brothers have kind of got caught in the middle of this proxy fight.
All right, so two quick things just to put a pin on this. Did you learn anything? I love having these conversations with people on my show. There's times when I feel like I learned something that I didn't know, which is, again, the beauty of the conversations in the long format. When you interviewed these guys, did they change your perception of what you had read about them online or other people had suggested to you about them?
In all fairness, I didn't really interview them. I had a cigar with them. We had mutual friends, notably Tucker Carlson and others. So I spent a couple hours with them, but it was mostly social. Frankly, they were both much easier going, much more self-effacing. Andrew's actually quite funny. They were fun to be with. I'm not going to pass judgment. I think the case against them in Romania is nonsense. Rick Grinnell, I think, interceded because they're U.S. citizens to get them out of horrific conditions in a Romanian jail. They're committed to Florida. They're committed to being Americans. They are strong supporters of the president. They certainly have their critics. I found that out online.
All right. So then the last thing is on this governor's race, do you think that this will, if Casey DeSantis runs, the current first lady, against Byron Donalds, will this create a further fissure in the party, or is this kind of like the presidential race? We'll have it out and then we'll all get back together.
I don't see it causing a division in the primary. First, I'm curious as to what her qualifications to be governor are.
Right.
I mean, she was a newscaster and she's done some great work for charity here. I'm not sure that prepares you to be governor. Ron DeSantis was a 3-term congressman. Byron Donalds is a 3-term congressman. Yet for the governor to say that the congressman is not qualified to be governor, it's a little bit of a joke. The point, of course, is that the people who like the president also like the governor. So I don't think the party will have a hard time uniting around Byron Donalds, who I expect to be the nominee. And again, Sean, I'm predicting he starts behind, she starts ahead, all name ID. The president comes in here and campaigns for him a couple times. It will be all over.
That's what happened when DeSantis ran against Adam Putnam. Huge name difference. Adam Putnam had been elected statewide as ag commissioner, family well known in the community, and then suddenly Trump says, boom, DeSantis is my guy, and the race goes out of control, over, right? I think you're absolutely right. That's how this thing plays out. Once Trump puts his finger even further on the Byron Donalds scale, it's over.
Yeah, I mean, there's a bigger issue here at play, which is to say that Governor DeSantis would like to run for president again in 2028, but he's term limited in 2026. So what's he going to do for 2 years? And more importantly, where can he raise money for 2 years? Governors can raise a lot of money because people give because they have to give to the governor. They have business before the state. No one gives to Ron DeSantis because they love him. They either gave to him because he's running against Donald Trump, they weren't for Donald Trump, or because they had a state interest. So if his wife is not governor, and if he's not in the U.S. Senate, and there's no indication he's going to run for the Senate seat that was vacated by Marco Rubio, I mean, the current senator, Ashley Moody, the state attorney general, she could be a seat warmer. But you know this, Sean. Senators don't raise the kind of money that governors can raise. Right. So I think, first of all, I think he's going to have a tough time in 2028. We've got a bench. J.D. Vance is doing a great job. In our party, hegemony, the natural order, things is very important. He would be the next person in line. He's got to continue to do the great job he's doing, but I expect that to happen. And then you have other candidates who I think are more attractive potentially. Sometimes you run for president if you really want to be vice president. That is, and you don't attack the front runner, but you run a constructive race. But I think 2028 is going to be a tough haul for Ron DeSantis. If his wife is not governor and he has no fulcrum to raise money, I'm not sure where he comes up with the bread. And then there's his lack of charisma, but that's a whole different question.
Roger Stone, you never disappoint. Thanks for joining us today.
Great to be with you, Sean. Thanks very much for having me.
You bet. Thank you. What a great conversation with Roger. Thanks for being here today. Reminder, Caroline Levitt, Steve Bannon, the big panel from The Blaze, big week ahead. Thanks for being part of this. Sign up at SeanSpicer.com for my latest newsletter, and we'll see you back here tomorrow on The Sean Spicer Show.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.